Leonie here from Frogfish Cards. Today I'm going to bring you a card that I'm using the new stamps from the new holiday catalogue that is coming out on the 1st of September. So this is the Paisley collection. It has matching thinlits that are cut around these beautiful stamps. It also has some decorative flower thinlits and Paisley pattern thinlit as well. So I'm going to bring that to you today. I'm going to do it as a waterfall card. I'm sure there's plenty of waterfall card videos out there, but my video isn't to display the waterfall card as such. It is to bring you the new collection, and I'm just happening to do it as a waterfall card. So to do that, you're going to require one piece. I'm using Cajun Craze, but you could use whatever you wanted to, of Cajun Craze at 8 3/4 by 2 inch, and it has to be scored at 2 inches, 2 3/4 inches, 3 1/2 inches, and 4 1/4 inch. You're going to require 4 pieces of Cajun Craze cut at 2 inches by 2 inches. With this particular application, I'm actually doing 3 DSP at 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 and 1 very vanilla at 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. You'll need a piece of Cajun Craze at 1 inch by 4 1/8, and I've just cut another piece of DSP out because I just wanted to make it a little different to how I've done it before, and just laid that in there to just give it a bit of contrast. You don't have to do that, but I liked, because on the one that I did previously, I didn't do that. It's just the plain piece of cardstock, but I wanted to just jazz it up a little bit today. This is the new DSP, the new Paisley DSP. You need 2 pieces of this. This is the opposite side of itself here, and they are at 3 7/8 by 5 1/4. I'm using from the Halloween section of the new catalogue the new pumpkin glimmer sheets instead of the copper foil sheets, just to give it a bit of difference than using the copper. I just wanted to see how it would look, and it turned out quite well, so I really love that contrast. So I'm using the pumpkin glimmer sheet, and you will need 4 1/4 inches by 2 inches of that. You'll need a 1 inch by 3 inch piece. This also has to be scored at each end by 1/4 inch. A 1 inch circle out of your Cajun Craze, pardon me, and a piece of, this makes the main card itself, so it's 4 1/8 by 11 3/4. So I'm using rich raspberry for that. Okay, so to get started, I'm just going to fold this as per normal with a boning tool. I get into trouble by my ladies when I say that like that. But anyway, and then you are adhering your piece of cardstock to the main card, which is the rich raspberry. Always remember to ink around your edges. I'm a real stickler for that. I don't like edges that are not inked, but everyone's different, so do your own thing. But that's my thing. I think it looks tacky, which you've probably heard before if you watch any of my videos. And then you're just adhering that to that. just like that. Then this 1 inch by 4 1/8 inch that goes across your card like so. And to affix that to the card, I'm actually going to use brads. So I need to bring over my crocodile. Any sort of hole punch will do. Just make sure that when you punch the hole that you are going in past this piece of DSP so that the hole goes in beyond that. You don't want to go into your cardstock too close to the edge. You want to be able to go right in onto the DSP. And then I'm just putting in my brads. As close to the colours as you can possibly get them. Stampin' Up doesn't do brads anymore. Some of the ladies use staples. I don't like that. Again, I think it looks tacky, but it's just a preference. They say it looks very grunge-like, but it's not me. So any sort of a fixer, but you don't want to glue this section. You just need to have that part in there has to be totally free. Otherwise your Waterfull card won't slide, and you want it to slide. So that part of your card has to be totally free. So you're just affixing it at either end so that this part is open and you're able to slide your Waterfull card up and down freely. Okay. So once you've done that, I want to put the internal part of the card in to cover your mechanics. I don't like my mechanics showing, so I'm just going to use the opposite part of that DSP and adhere it inside. I've already inked the edge of this one just to save a bit of time on the video, just so that you know that I'm not sticking it in there without it being inked. At this point you can also put in your little wedge, which is what stops it from coming open completely when it's standing up. You don't want it to have it stand up and then it keeps on sliding open, so I make this little wedge. So you just want a 1 inch by 3 inches, and you're just scoring it at 1/4 of an inch on both ends. And then with some tear and tape, you're folding it back in on itself like so. So it looks a bit like that. You're also scoring through the middle. So I forgot to do that. I'll put it back and do that. So it's at 1/4 of an inch, and then 1.5 inches, and then 1/4 of an inch. So then it's valley, peak, valley when you fold it. And I'll score the other piece while I've got the scoreboard here. So this piece here you are scoring at 2 inches, and then 2 3/4 of an inch, and then 3.5 and 4 1/4. And that's all you're doing on that one. And then you're just folding all those lines so they're nice and defined. Okay. we'll get rid of the scoring board. We'll go back to our card. So before I adhere this little wedge in, which I have not yet put the tear and tape on, if I can find it. I usually have all this sitting and waiting, but I've obviously put it somewhere different. So you're just putting the tear and tape on those ends. Oh, goodness me. Thank you. So when you put it in, I'll show you how to do that in a minute, sorry, I'm jumping ahead of the gun. Before you do that, you need to cut out a half circle in this bottom section of the card here, so that where you've got somewhere to put your fingers when you're trying to use the waterfall mechanism. So you want to be about halfway in the middle of the card, and you're just going to go halfway down that circle and cut it out, just so it looks like that. Then you want to peel your tape off these, your backing tape of the tear and tape. And when you put it in to your card, you want to have your mountain into the valley. So what you need to do is just up from your little circle here, or probably an inch, you want to place the peak to the valley and put it onto the DSP, then bring the backing of the card over, making sure that your tape is facing up, and just sticking it down like so. And that will stop the card, excuse me, I'm dropping everything here. That will stop the card from pulling open further than what you want it to. So it'll sit like that. You can see that little wedge is in there, and then when it closes, it just closes with that peak going into that valley. Okay, so the next step is we'll put this aside. We're finished working on that for now, and we're going to start working on our little decorative pieces that we have to place on our waterfall mechanism. So you need to place this so that it's sort of central to your card in both directions. I like to put it that way. Some people like to bring it down to the bottom of their DSP. You can do that if you want to, but I personally like to have it sitting so that it's central to the card, not to the DSP. So something like that. Then you want to turn that part of the waterfall mechanism back, and just in the middle of that section you're going to put a piece of tear and tape. So you just tear a little bit off like that, and if you have it sitting there, then you can see where it has to go, where the tape has to go. Otherwise it's a bit hard to judge. So you're just putting it through that middle section and then taking the tape off there, making sure again that this is nice and central. Bring this piece down over the top and affix it to that strap piece there. So you can see why we needed to keep this piece from being adhered, so that this has a chance to be able to be moved and functions without any obstruction. So now we're going to work on the little decorative bits that go on top of that. So again, I'm inking around the DSP, and I'm also going to lightly ink around my Very Vanilla with the Occasion Craze. Then I'm just going to glue them to the Occasion Craze 2" by 2" squares that I already cut out. And just make sure you have a nice even border of Occasion Craze around your DSP and your Very Vanilla. Okay, and I've already done a couple over here earlier to save a bit of time on the video. If I can pick the silly thing up. There we go. So you have your 3 DSP and the 1 Very Vanilla. Now, I cut out a little earlier a couple of these little beautiful dies that came in the Paisley set. So just 2 different types of flower. So that's the flowers there, and I've cut them out. And I got both of those out of one piece of 2" by 2" glimmer sheet. So you're really not having to use a lot. As you can see, that's them there. So there's 2 out of that one piece. And I'm just going to cut the last one for you, just to show you how easy it is to cut the glimmer sheet. I never have any issue with it. So I'm just going to push all those to one side for now, because I need to bring up the big shot. Just move it a bit so you can get it in shot, I hope. So I'm using the magnetic plate. When you're using the magnetic plate, make sure your cutting plate is to the magnetic plate, because you're actually placing your thinlet with the cutting side down. So then you put your thinlet on your glimmer sheet, and you place your top plate on and roll it through the big shot. And it's as simple as that, and I will get this out of shot. And as you can see, it just cuts it out beautifully. I have had no issue with it at all with the glimmer sheets. So don't be frightened to use something that you're unfamiliar with, or don't be frightened. Don't think that because it comes with a different series of cardstock or stamping sets that you can't mix and match them, because I think that that's a shame if you just don't experiment and use different membranes and try and mix and match your cardstock and all that sort of stuff. you'll notice that I've only got 3 flowers cut out, because on the Very Vanilla we're actually going to stamp it a little, and we're also going to put a verse on it. So the 3 stamps that we're going to be using to do the Very Vanilla is this tiny little flower here, this sprig of leaves, and I'm using the verse, I thank you for your part in my journey. So I just really love this set. The font in this set is just beautiful. It stamps beautifully. It's a really pretty set. Not everyone likes Paisley, but I can't remember a time in my life where I haven't liked Paisley. It's just one of those things. So using Delightful Dijon, we're going to stamp that little flower. Just a couple of times on the paper. Like so. Then I'm going to use the little green leaves, and I'm using mint macaroon for that one. And I'm not going to do any more than that. It's just to add a bit of character to it. I might actually do one more flower. I'm just not happy with that looking so bland. But you don't want to have it too busy, because you've got to put your verse over it. Now with your verse, you'll need a dauber, because with the poly stamps, the pens don't tend to, the markers don't tend to ink it enough for my liking. Everyone's different, as I said, but for my liking, I prefer to, I like it better that way, I prefer to use a dauber. So I'm just going to ink up the dauber. Now, of course, this verse is not going to fit in its entirety across that piece of cardstock because it's too small, so I'm going to split it in half. So I'm going to put I thank you for your in at the top, and then I'll do part in my journey at the bottom. So when you're inking it, just be really careful that you don't go over the part that you don't want covered. I've got really long nails and I tend to stick them there, and so that I'm not inking where I don't want it to be inked. But you'll come up with your own technique, I'm sure. And just wipe off any excess ink, because you don't want that on your work. There's nothing worse than going to this stage and then realising that you've ruined your work because you haven't taken the time to take off that extra bit of ink that's on your stamp. And I'm just going to stamp that bit there at the top. And then I'm going to stamp the other bit, wipe it off completely with the baby wipe. So again, I'm putting my fingernail through there so I don't get what I don't want inked. And I'm going to do the other part of the verse with the dauber. Wipe off the excess ink so it doesn't get on my work with a wet one. And then I'm going to ink that I'm going to stamp that underneath that I've just stamped. Like so. So that's all the inking I'm going to be doing with that tiny little bit. Now with the other 3 bits, that I have, I'm just going to close up these inks because I have had times where I've been doing stuff on video and not closed them up and then sat my work on top of the open ink and ruined it. So just going to put those away. With the 3 pieces that we covered with the DSP on our occasion craze, we are going to put our little cut out pieces with the glimmer sheet, the pumpkin glimmer sheet, onto those 3 panels. And I'm just going to use the fine glue to adhere those to the DSP. Now just remember with the fine glue, it's not a fast drying glue, it's designed to allow you to work with the pieces a little bit before it dries, so don't fiddle with it too much. Place it on and just let it sit and dry. If you fiddle with it, it will fall off and you'll have to start all over again. It's great because it does allow you time to play with the work a little bit, but don't play with it too much that you wear all the glue off and then you're back to square one because it hasn't stuck. Just place it and let it sit and it'll do the job for you if you don't fiddle with it too much. If you find at any time that it's just not sitting the way you want to, put something heavy on it. And that'll give it some it'll give it some weight to hold it down, and then you're not fiddling with it. Just tap your glue a bit so that the glue runs back down that little tube. I've had a few ladies that haven't done that, and then when they've stuck their little needle back into the tube, it has stuck and they haven't been able to get the lid off. So I just give it a bit of a tap and I haven't had any issues with it. Now when you do the next process, make sure that you have the tape at the top part of your work, because we're not adhering the whole thing, so you have to make sure that it's at the top part of your work, and you're just going to tape all 4 of these panels. So the best way to make sure you're at the top is look at it. That's the top of my work. Turn it over. Then you know that you're at the top of your work. Don't fiddle around with it too much. Don't get distracted, because believe me, I have made the mistake of sticking it on upside down, and I've been crafting for years. So you don't want to get to a point in your work and then find, oh gee, I've done that now, what am I going to do? Some things are easy to fix, some are not. So you really want to just make sure you get it right in the first place. Think about things carefully before you apply yourself to them. then you want to decide which way you want to have your panels sitting. So I quite like this one the best. So that will be my top panel. And because this one and that one are large, I would put my smallest one in the middle. Everyone's different. So, and you are working backwards. So you want to start with your versed, piece first, because that goes on top of this section here. So you're just peeling your backing paper off your tear and tape, and you're placing it so that it sits on that scored line. And you just follow that process with all 4 pieces. So of course the next piece would go to the next scored line. And then the next piece again would go to the next scored line. And then the last piece goes to the very top. And as you can see, when you pull it, it rolls down like a waterfall. But I just wanted to display our beautiful new Paisley range, which I think is just divine. Again, I think I'm going to put another, oh, maybe not. So, the last thing that you need to do is add a bit of ribbon. So these 3 ribbons come in a set of 3. They are part of the Paisley collection because they're the colours that are on the Paisley DSP. Pardon me. So you've got your Delightful Dijon, your Rich Razzleberry and your Mint Macaroon. Well, I'm going to use a little bit of the Mint Macaroon ribbon. You just want to fold that in half. You need really good scissors for ribbon, so I keep these scissors just for ribbon because they need to be really sharp to cut the ribbon exactly how you want it. Then you need to pierce a hole in the ribbon. Oh, I won't use that. I'll use my piercer if I can find it. That's not always the easiest thing to do. So you want to pierce a hole in the ribbon just so that your brad will go through, and then you want to pierce a hole about a 1/4 inch up, halfway across. I need to bring it through this way so I can see. So about 1/4 inch up, halfway across that 2-inch panel. And then you're pushing your brad through your ribbon and into that hole that you've just punched in that cardstock, folding your brad out, like so. Now this is where your little 1-inch circle comes in. I hate mechanics showing. I also think for children and things like that, if you were to give this to a child, although I think this pattern's probably too busy for a child, but you may want to make some sort of different waterfall card, is to stick this little circle over the top of your mechanics, just so it doesn't look tacky, and so that if a child does play with it, it's not got any sharp parts that where they could actually hurt themselves. So I like to make sure that my brads and everything are covered. And that's sort of pretty much it. So waterfall cards are beautiful cards to give to people. And I just wanted to say again, I really love this Paisley range that is coming out in the new catalogue that is released on the 1st of September, the new holidays catalogue released on the 1st of September. And it sits up beautifully. There's no problem with it, because it's got that little wedge in there that stops it from pushing open. I hope you've enjoyed this video.